Welcome everyone. Such a pleasure to see all of you attend this session, and I hope to make it really exciting. In fact, what our guest is an outstanding professional, and I think you're going to learn a lot from him.
All right. Hey.
Good
morning.
Hi, Doc. How are you doing? This is Vasudev here. Good to see you finally.
Yeah. Hey.
Can you see me?
Yeah? Yes, I can see you.
Okay. So we have a bunch of guys who are really excited to talk to you. So I spent a little bit of time going through your background, and it's fascinating. And going from your aerospace days at IIT Madras all the way through Georgia Tech and so on. And a very interesting question, and I want you to at some point answer, if not now, is you decided at some point it was important to do an MBA at UC Irvine. So there was some motivation there, which I'm sure that there's something interesting you want to share with us. Okay. So anyway, I was just thinking you're talking myths about leadership, and I think I was about to post something sarcastic on LinkedIn just the other day, Doc. Okay, because there's so much stuff happening on leadership. Everyone seems to be a profound philosopher and expert on the subject of leadership. So it looks like everything that needs to be said about leadership has already been said. And I'm being facetious, you understand. So, what are these things that we just take for granted, the behaviors, kind of perspectives, views, which have been ingrained, which we have absorbed over the period of times. We assume that that's what a leader is all about, and so on. So I hope you'll just tear apart all these things and bring to bear your fantastic experience both in industry and academia. I'm sure you have come to some great conclusions as to what those myths are and what it is in reality. And in fact, I'm sure you touch upon this. Have all these things been completely forced to be remodeled given the COVID situation where everything is just thrown up in the air? Anyway, I don't want to steal your thunder. So over to you. As I just told the group, we are hoping for about 35 to 40 minutes of your talk, Doc. Okay, so go ahead with the talk, and there will be questions which will be collected, from the audience. It will be collected separately. At the end of your talk, I will look at those questions. I'll pick a few questions and I will throw them at you. And maybe I'll add some of my own if required. And overall, I suppose the whole thing should take out 55 to 60 minutes. Does that work for you?
Yeah, that's good.
Okay.
Hey, my apologies for not joining on time. I'm not a regular Zoom user, and it took me a while to figure out what's going on. So, Vasudev, you talked about aerospace and IIT and all that, but I wanted to start with what I am not. You set very high expectations there. Everything has been figured out, and gurus are talking. So I'm not a guru. I'm not a psychologist. I'm just an engineer who happened to do different things. You asked me about why I went to go study at UC Irvine, get a degree in management. It was mainly because of the myths. I didn't change jobs after an MBA. I didn't go become a finance analyst or a stockbroker or anything like that. I had a job before I went to the MBA. After the MBA, I continued to have that same job. So very different from what a lot of people do. They want to go to grad school, go to which is an IIM or any other MBA course, and say, I want to completely change my career. I didn't change my career. It was mainly to answer the kind of questions or mindset that people have that says, what, you need this degree to be able to do something. Yes, I learned a few things. I think it did help me. I met a few people, mostly people who were much younger than me at that time. But it at least helped to maybe clear some cobwebs in somebody else's mind that, okay, this fellow can do more than just engineering or science and so forth. So sometimes you have to do things, not so much because it's important to you, but it's because important for someone else. So that's kind of my story on why I went after an MBA. So let me, I did put some thoughts together. I hope these will more than answer questions. I think I'm looking at these to trigger some thoughts in people's heads. Tell me if you can see something. I don't know whether you can. Okay, so we have something that I put together. So let's get going. This talk is no, don't go forward. Just stay there. Stay on the first page, please. Yeah. This talk is to basically delve into some ideas that have taken on the idea of a myth. I'll define, what I mean by a myth here. And really, I want to talk to you about a few of them, which are, I would say, fairly prevalent. At least I've heard them multiple times. And how do you get past them, or do you get stuck with them? Does that drive your life, or do you figure out a way to get around them? And the way we are going to do it, if you go to the next chart, what we are going to talk about is, what is a myth? The image that you see there is Yoda. It's a mythical creature from the Star Wars movies. What is a myth? What are some of these leadership myths that are out there? I've done some searching and found a whole lot of them. But then there are some data points as well. So let's take a look at those data points. And of course, at the end of the whole question is, what do you do with these? Do you hang on to the myths and drive yourself crazy? Do you look at the data points and throw away the myths? How do you navigate, especially in these days of COVID and a lot of things? I will touch on that as well. So that's kind of my game plan here. So we can go to the next chart. So we'll start with, what do we mean by myth? These are some of the definitions. Nowadays the internet is full of places that give you information like this. Somebody says they can't see the presentation. So I don't know, I can see it. I don't know what needs to be done.
We'll take care of that. No worries. Please go ahead.
So, a lot of times we use the idea of a myth. You say it's a traditional story. It has, various phenomena, characters, like Yoda was one of those characters. Sometimes it is about a fictitious or imaginary person or thing, maybe only existing in imagination. But the meaning of, if you hit the forward button once, the meaning that I want to use here is that second bullet that says it's a common misconception. And the common misconception comes because many people somehow started believing in it, and it has taken a life of its own. And that's the meaning that I'm going to use. Menaka, if you can hit the forward arrow, please. That's the meaning that we want to emphasize here. That's the meaning of the myth that we are going to talk about. Okay, if you go to the next chart. Now, we said the myth is a common misconception, meaning many people believe that's what it is. It's a collective belief. But what happens in real life is, enough people are talking about it. People may say all Scandinavians are tall, or all South Indians are dark-skinned, or whatever those things might be. Slowly you start making those as assumptions. And the more and more you hear about it, you start accepting it. Yeah, maybe that's true. I don't know. 10 people have been telling me. The 12th person also said the same thing. And then you take that collective belief and make it your own personal belief. And I think that's where the trouble starts. Because now you start believing it. You not only start believing in it, you probably share that belief with other people, and you propagate this thing that was a misconception to begin with, but you have given it that much more power because you believe it, and maybe you are behaving based on those assumptions and that belief. Maybe you are limiting yourself because you believe something, and you think that, okay, how since that is true, I don't think I can do something about it. So that's the problem with these things, that from the myth, stage, they become something that you internalize as a personal belief. So if you go to the next chart, what I did was I have my own list. I didn't go there and put them down. I said, okay, what are other people talking about? There are lots of articles that talk about leadership related myths. So I picked a few. These are not even a complete list from them. I just put a few of them out there, and what you see there, you will see some commonality emerging out of them, and one of them is about this whole business of extroverts. Leaders must be extroverts, like Insperity says. And then the bottom left, it says the best leaders are extroverts. And then the one at the bottom right says leaders, extroverts make better leaders. So this introvert, extrovert, people seem to think that if you have to be a leader, you have to be an extrovert, and that's kind of become an urban legend myth, with respect to leadership. And there are a few others. So if you go to the next chart, what I have done, knowing that we only have so much time, I said, let us take 3 of these and let's get a little deeper into those and see if we can make some sense out of it. So I said leaders must be extroverts is a common myth, occurs fairly often. There are multiple places where another myth that is mentioned is that men make better leaders. And of course, nowadays, there's a lot of debate about diversity and can women do the same things men can do and all that. So I thought this would be an interesting item to look at. And then the other one that comes up is, all you have to do is to, go to an MBA class, go attend somebody's seminar, figure out, one style of leadership, and then start applying it all over the place. And actually, that's a big myth as well. So one leadership style does not fit everywhere. And not only that, it might have worked well, last year, it may not work this year because, things are changing, and the COVID is an example of that. So if you hit the arrow, forward arrow 2 times, so do leaders have to be extroverts? We have extrovert people, introvert people. These are ideas in psychology. People have done a lot of work trying to figure out what these are. If you go forward 1 notch, there are some characteristics of extroverts. Hit the arrow once, okay? So the primary concept here is that an extrovert is a person who gets energy from other people. They need to interact with others. If you put them in a room and solitary confinement, they don't like it. They need to be interacting with others. They tend to make a lot of friends. Maybe they are the people who have 500 friends on LinkedIn or Facebook or whatever. They think out loud, like it says, but they do get distracted easily because they constantly want to be communicating, talking to others. They wear their emotions on their sleeve. Everybody kind of knows, this person is feeling good today. Oh my God, some disaster happened. He or she is down. So it's all very open, very interactive. But the main thing is getting the energy from outside, from other people. Now, if you click on that one more time, you will see that introverts are kind of the other extreme. They don't need someone else to give them the energy. These are people who are like batteries. They create their own energy, which means in today's environment, even if OPEC says no more oil for you, introverts will do fine because they have their own batteries. Whereas the extroverts are going to be standing in line looking for where is the gas station or the petrol bunk where I can buy the gasoline. Now, introverts are also quieter in large groups. That is not their preferred environment. They don't have 500 Facebook friends. Maybe they have 10, 15. They are happy with that. But they can concentrate for long stretches. So they're happy reading a book, solving some problem. They don't need to keep, talking to somebody else and getting that energy refilled because they have their own source. They learn more by observing, which means when you go to a meeting, they are not the ones who are speaking a lot. They are probably, just listening to what other people are saying. Maybe they are making some conclusions, observations, but they are not the ones who are very active in the meeting. That doesn't mean they are sleeping or they are inactive. Their way of operating is different. And if they have to say something, they're not just going to blurt it out. They're going to think about it, make sure that this is the message I want to convey. And then the message is rehearsed or, prepared, if you like. But at the same time, they also don't say too much about how they are feeling. They are feeling fine all the time as far as everybody else is concerned. We just don't know how they are feeling. So very different ways of interacting with the world, how and where they get their energy from, how they behave in groups. And of course, when people are quiet in large groups, they don't have too many friends, the world makes a conclusion that, okay, these people are useless, they don't want to be friends with us, who do they think they are? I don't think these people will be good leaders. And that's kind of how that whole myth has developed, because most of the leaders that we see, they are very flamboyant, that they are the ones who capture the limelight. They are the ones the newspapers are writing about. So it kind of gives the impression that maybe you have to be an extrovert. Maybe you have to be outspoken. Maybe you have to share everything, talk to lots of people, go into a meeting and shake hands with everybody and say, hey, I'm Bob, what's your name? And Bob probably won't remember the other person's name, but he wants to make sure that everybody knows who Bob is. So that's the kind of distinction that you see. So at this point, what I thought I will do is, get some involvement, now that you have seen the distinction between the extrovert people and the introvert people. Who do you think you are? So I think the next page, I said there is a poll. I think there is a poll. You can do it here, but I think the poll should come up. I'm just trying to get an idea. Menaka, you can figure out how to bring the poll up, and just to get an idea, what does the audience look like? Maybe you are not sure. Maybe you think you are a mixture. Are you sharing it?
Yeah, it is showing up as a pop-up. You should be seeing that.
Why I'm not seeing it? Well, maybe you can just read it out. What does it look like?
So about 16% of the people say definitely an introvert. About 19% says definitely an extrovert. 58% says maybe a mixture. 6% says not sure.
Okay, so 16 and 19, not that different. So, people who are quite sure. So if you go to the next chart, it's the same chart we had before. And if you click on that one more time, actually nowadays people are talking about another variety of people they call ambivert. It's kind of like ambidextrous, no, don't stay there, stay there. People who, who can do things with their left hand and right hand. So, these are people who have mixture, they have some traits that may make them look like an introvert. There are other traits that makes them look like an extrovert. So most of us, this is like the bell curve. Usually people are distributions among people in large populations are rarely bimodal. You have a distribution where a bunch of people are, many people are bunched up in the middle, and then you have, the bell curve with a few people who are strongly extrovert or strongly introvert. So that's what the more recent conversations and the people who do research and things like this, that's what they're finding out. Chances are many of us, and I think you said 58%, who identified themselves as essentially ambivert. They have, traits of this and that. And also sometimes some of us, we can act like an extrovert even though we are primarily an introvert. There may be people who can act like an introvert even though their preference is extrovert. And that's kind of what that ambivert, tendency enables you to do. We may not act, the same way every day, 24 hours a day, depending on the circumstance, depending on the situation. We may be able to adjust our behavior. I know I do that. My preference is more on the left side, more to be, an introvert kind of person. I don't necessarily want to, go to a large group and talk to everybody in the large group. But if necessary, I'll do that. But it's not, something that I want to do. Whereas an extrovert person may say, "What's wrong with you, Bala? Here you are in a group of 500 people and you only spoke to 5." So that's kind of, how it actually works. Okay, if you go to the next chart, let's see what does this mean. We said, there are 5 here. I think there were only supposed to be 3. So leaders must be extroverts. So what does it mean? Let's go to the next chart, please. Now, here are some leaders. Many of these, I'll give you a hint, are modern leaders, in the new millennial kind of businesses. So here's another poll for you. How many of these people can you identify? Maybe you can only find 1. I didn't say 0. I'm hoping that you will find at least 1 that you can identify. Maybe there are some of you who recognize 5 or more. Can we take a minute to get some feedback from you?
8% of people can identify 2 of these introverts, and 15% can identify 3, 19% can identify 4, 56% can identify 5 or more.
Oh, that's wonderful. This is a very, very well-informed group. So if you click forward, let us see who these people are. All right, stop there. So these are some very, very well-known people. Some of these people are super wealthy people as well. Bill Gates, Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, Warren Buffett, Zuckerberg. These are all extremely wealthy people and very, very famous people, especially in the IT and the internet-based business world. Warren Buffett is an old-timer. He's like an investor and is worth many, many billions of dollars. Everybody else is in the IT business. But what this proves is that it's okay if you're an introvert. These people say they are introverts. They are not the ones who are super talkative, when it comes to groups. But there is something they are able to leverage the introvert traits. They are able to create. They're able to run and manage, amazing businesses that we all depend on, so much. So, to the introverts out there, basically this is busting the myth that you don't have to be an extrovert to be a leader. If you're an extrovert, you can be a leader. No problem there. But if you are an introvert, you don't have to give up and say, leadership is not something that is within my reach. It's very much within your reach, as indicated by these people. If you click one more time, I just wanted to show you 4 more, images. You probably recognize some or all of them. Mahatma Gandhi, he was an introvert, but then see what he created, working with others. Albert Einstein the same way. J.K. Rowling, she's an author of, the whole series. What was it called? Harry Potter series, right? So famous, almost every kid knows about it. And Emma Watson, she was a child star in that series. I mean, who would have guessed that she is an introvert? A movie actress, still continues to be in the limelight. But these are people who are introverts too. So my whole point is to say that being an introvert is not a limitation. It is simply a different way that people, approach their work, maybe the choice of their work. You don't see too many salesmen in this. You don't see too many people who are required to go and interact. These are people who are who are creating things, thinking, maybe they're working in the background with a little bit away from the limelight, but nevertheless creating, amazing products and companies and ideas and so forth. All right, we can move on to the next chart and the next comment. So why do introverts make great leaders? They are motivated by productivity, not necessarily ambition. Again, remember, many of us are a mixed bag. We are ambiverts, so I'm sure we have ambition as well. They build more, they build fewer maybe, but more meaningful connections with their buddies that they connect with. They don't get easily distracted, which means they can latch on to their vision, their idea, and work on it for long periods of time with a huge amount of focus, and that obviously helps. And they solve problems with thoroughness, rather than hurry up and do something and say, hey, I was the first. They don't mind being taking their own time, thinking through it very carefully and so forth. And there are many areas of of life, of business, where that thoroughness is desirable. And if you are into any of the IT based or engineering or even finance and investment kinds of things, Warren Buffett, that thoroughness is very, very important. It is not superficial. It's very well thought through, well developed kind of ideas. And those are reasons why they actually become successful. And those are traits that introverts, do have. Here's another myth that is, often mentioned. Men make better leaders. Somehow we have brainwashed a lot of women into believing that. We have brainwashed a lot of men into believing this, and often creates, challenges, difficulties in the current day. But the real story here is about diversity. It's not really about men versus women or anything along those lines. That is there, of course, but it is about diversity. It could be gender diversity. It could be age diversity. Young people working with, more senior, more experienced people. Culture. Many of us, in Bangalore, in India, nowadays we work in global companies. There's an Indian culture working with an American, European, Japanese culture. There are differences. They are diverse. And when you have those different kinds of people, different kinds of thoughts coming in, it's really about diversity of thought. So this whole idea of, men are better leaders than women, that is no longer the way we should be thinking about it. And interestingly enough, Harvard Business Review, they have done a study. They looked at the feedback, people get, 360-degree feedback. They analyzed the feedback from a large number of people. And the feedback, remember, is coming from various places, their peers, their bosses, and so forth. And what they found was very fascinating. They found that compelling evidence that this bias, that believing that men make better leaders than women, is actually incorrect. They found that in 84% of the traits that they looked at, women were actually scoring better than men. And completely opposite to what the myth was saying. So if you go to the next chart, there is a graphic showing you. So if you think men are better leaders, think again, because that's not what the data says. Go to the next chart. There we go. So you see, the black bars are for men's data. The orange kind of color is women's data. And other than the top two traits, developing strategic perspectives and technical or professional expertise, everything else below that, these are all, traits of leadership that were, taken out of this 360-degree view. Women are better than men. Of course, you can't say it's a huge difference, but it is a noticeable difference. And at least it is not like what people thought or the myth says. You can see the last one, taking initiative. The score for men is 48%, score for women is 56% almost. And then, of course, all the others, the delta is smaller. But there is a pattern here, consistent pattern where women are actually slightly ahead of men. So this whole idea that somehow women are not going to make good leaders, it's the men who are going to make good leaders, that theory, that idea is completely thrown away, debunked by this data here. And it's not one group, it's a large group of people. It's analysis done by people at Harvard business school. These are people who do their work fairly thoroughly. So this is not just a local something that somebody did. And there are many different traits here. I'm not going to get into all these traits, but these are the kinds of traits leaders are expected to have. And basically it's saying that women can do as well, or actually they can do even better than men. If you go to the next chart, I will show you some pictures of women who have excelled. And these are all women from India, starting from Rani Lakshmibai, from our historical records. And you see, Indira Nui, who was a business leader. Arundhati Roy is an author. Mary Kom is in the, boxing. Seema Rao is an interesting character. She actually trains our army people in how to shoot weapons. She and her husband work in the army. Kiran Bedi, you probably know, currently she's the governor of, Puducherry. Barka Dutt is in the TV news. And Timmaka is an old lady who has planted lots and lots of trees in Karnataka and has been recognized for her leadership in that area. Again, leadership and initiative in a variety of different areas. These are all women. Of course, we have had politicians, at the state level, at the national level, senior leaders, and even today we continue to have people excelling, women excelling in various areas. So again, goes back to throw away that myth that you have to be a man to be a leader. Next chart, please.
Doc, just a quick thing on time. Please keep it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. So one other thing, this idea about leadership style, there's one style. If I figure that out, I can use it forever. Go to the next chart. That's not true either. And if you click once, it's because you look at what is the world that we operate in. Some of it operate in the technical world, some of us in the business world. We interact with people, we interact with global events. So if you click, you will find that in the technical world, if you're doing analysis, the result is precise. Analysis gives you specific answers. But if you go into the world of design, there is variability. But then the business world has more variability. And if you look at people, people are highly variable, not only between people, but the same person from day to day. And if you look at the global events, it's a mess. I mean, look at COVID. Who expected? It's highly unpredictable. Who expected, we will be dealing with COVID? Who expected, China will suddenly come and, start doing things on the line of control? So, what kind of response you take? So the point is, there is a lot of variability in the circumstances that leaders have to deal with, the environment that leaders have to deal with. So how the heck do you have one size fits all? You cannot say, here's a formula I figured out in MBA school, and then I'm just going to use it for the rest of my career. Just doesn't work. And what does work? Go to the next chart. So what do we have to do in that case? We basically have to go to what people refer to as situational leadership. It's an adaptive style. There is basically a collection of different styles that one would use depending on what it is that the situation calls for. I mean, we can have a political leader who has to deal with, everything that is, at the national level, completely different from, an engineering leader or a business leader whose environment is very, very different. All these are leaders, but the tools, the techniques they would use would be very, very different. So what do we have to do? So what we have seen so far, click a couple of times. And I'm saying that we have E leaders and I leaders, extrovert leaders and introvert leaders, when both are okay. We have seen examples. We can have female leaders and male leaders, and that works. So essentially, we don't have to go there and say, I want to change myself. Recommendation is be true to your own personality, leverage strengths we have. All these different kinds of leaders maybe have slightly different strengths. Don't try to become someone else, because that's not easy to live through. And interestingly enough, if you click one more time, this message of be yourself, be true personality is a very, very ancient message in India. This was said in the Bhagavad Gita. We can argue exactly when it was said, but thousands of years ago for sure, in a very, very different context, but essentially be true to yourself. Go one more chart. What else can we do because of this, need to be agile and flexible? If you click, we need to be, adaptable. We must have a toolkit of, ideas and techniques to draw from. And if you click one more time, this is answering the question that we had before. How do you cull all this down? This is the way I would cull it down and say, first and foremost, make sure we understand what is our purpose or vision. As a company, as an individual, as an organization, let's figure that out. What is it that we want to do? We will need technical skills. I might call it, IQ related. We definitely need people skills, which is the EQ kind of things. We must know how to run our business, whatever the business is, whether it's aerospace, like I work in, it could be any other kind of business. It could be the government. We must be living by principles and processes that are coming from the principles, because the principles endure. Situations come and go. People will come and go, but the principles endure. And the last item I would say is learn from many sources, continue to learn, because we live in a world that is dynamic, and fortunately there are many, many sources that we can learn from. So those are the 6 broad areas that I would say we need to use, and then depending on the circumstance, we would take whatever is applicable to the particular situation and make it adaptable. I think I'm coming towards the end of my presentation. Any of us can become a leader. Choose your purpose, your objective wisely, leverage your strengths, develop, learn, and become flexible and adaptable. That's how you can become a good leader, not only for today, tomorrow, but for many more years to come. And a couple of things, a couple of messages I wanted to leave you with. If you click to the next chart, I say they are last thoughts, but they hopefully they will be lasting thoughts. This is something I heard from my mentor. Don't put the key to your happiness in somebody else's pocket. Take charge of your own life, whatever it is that you want to do. Don't become dependent on other people or other individuals, and don't get caught up in the rat race, because even if you win the rat race, you will still be a rat. And this was wisdom that I picked up on a mug in an airport. So profound thoughts, important thoughts, something to think about. And I think I'm going to wrap up at this point. Thank you very much. I think my next chart, you can leave it here, or you can go to the next chart. And if there are any questions, I'll be happy to try to answer.
Yes, Doc. That was a fascinating, talk by you. Much appreciated on behalf of everyone. I wish we could have it for much longer. There are some questions about whether your presentation slides can be shared, but that's a standard question in most presentations. But I'm sure some of your words of wisdom you don't mind leaving behind in some manner.
I can probably share a PDF version.
Yeah, exactly. So what it is let's have a rapid fire situation, because many of these questions that have been asked, I think, require PhD theses to respond in detail. let's try to summarize. And I won't necessarily go in the order I received them. Okay, let me go through, because we have about probably 10 minutes more, and I'll just pick a few which I think are quite interesting. Okay, now here is somebody called Ashwati Girija Devi. I kind of liked her question. Okay, she had a number of questions, but the thing that I thought was interesting was, how can we analyze the leadership skill of the boss? Now, which is kind of going around, because this is assuming that younger people or junior people are supposedly ought to have certain other additional insights and should be able to critically analyze the leadership skill of the boss. Which, of course, also there's another question which is related, which is, well, then what is a lead? What or who is a leader? What does it mean to be a leader? So, can we somehow group these two things together in some clever way?
So, yes, I'm kind of wondering, why do you want to analyze the leadership skill of the boss? I think you may want to understand the way the boss operates, the boss's preferences, boss's priorities. I can understand, but by knowing that the boss is a good leader, bad leader, okay leader, I'm not sure what you gain. I think the emphasis or the energy to me would be in the wrong place. Now, if you believe that the boss's priorities are diagonally opposite to what you want to do in your life, don't hang in there. You're not going to go change your boss. If you happen to work in an organization for a person who has completely different way of looking at the world, and you are having a stress headache every day in the evening, it's time to go look for another job and another boss who probably has more consistency with the way you think and the way you operate. So I think trying to analyze somebody else and trying to find out that they have certain faults, I don't think it, at least in my way of thinking, it doesn't accomplish much.
Fantastic. Great insight. Here are two more questions I want to group together, Doc, which is interesting. So first of question number, part A of this question, is leadership all about results? So this is coming from Mohammed Ahmed, okay? That's one, the first question. Now, related question is, how to burst the myth of predefined assumption, identify the leader inside me. Now, the reason why I'd like to put this together is because, when you look at company culture as such, there are some organizations which, if you look at what was called the MBTI traits, which I'm sure you're familiar with, there's a belief that extrovert, there's a vast majority of the people at the top that somehow have a certain kind of, the left brain kind of a thing, or very aggressive, or tend to be, on the go, type A, and so on and so forth. So that seems to be perpetuating the thing, and therefore people who are introverts might find it difficult to identify and say, I can't be like them, and will I ever be a leader?
Yeah, well, so that
so
is
I
what
hope you're getting what I'm trying to say, because I think
no. So I hope I gave you an insight, that I showed you examples of people who are introverts who have become leaders. So I know that the reason we are referring to these as myths is because there is a misunderstanding. There are many misunderstandings in this world. Okay, these are not the only ones. There are many misunderstandings. We sometimes, a lot of young people think the old people are useless. What do they know? And the old people are probably thinking, these young people have completely lost it. When I was young, things used to be some other way. So there are many things that have become, these myths, because somehow collectively we have not thought through. But I think the distinction between the extrovert type and the introvert type is, if you are an introvert, you have to be a little more thoughtful about what kind of work, what kind of an area you would enjoy doing. Okay, at the end of the day, is it about results? Yes, results are required, because no company, no organization will continue to pay you for you to only have fun. You are allowed to have fun provided you are creating results. Nobody says don't have fun. Create results, have fun along the way. That is a perfectly good combination. But if I'm an introvert and I take up this, job of selling whatever, the proverbial, vacuum cleaner salesman, I'm supposed to go knock on everybody's door and then convince them that they should buy a vacuum cleaner from me. I mean, that is a, something written, failure written on it on day one. You are not going to enjoy doing that. After you talk to 2 people, you will say, and 2 people are not going to buy it. You have to talk to 100 people before you sell 5. If you're an introvert, by the time you talk to 2 or 3, you are already exhausted. That is not the kind of profession you want to go into. An extrovert will love it. He will, he will say, hey, I only finished 5 houses. I want to go to 5 more houses. And, he will chat up a great conversation, have a cup of tea with them and, make them buy a vacuum cleaner. So I think it is important to understand, who we are, what are our preferences, what do we want to do. This is why I said, pick your objective carefully. A guy like Bala should not aspire to be, King Kong in the movie. I'm a skinny guy. Okay. Or if I cannot even carry a tune and then I say, I want to be like Lata Mangeshkar. Well, sorry, you have to have the right training. You must have the right kind of characteristics, in order to do whatever it is that you do. So many times people get caught up in this because, they choose professions that, essentially their uncle or, father or brother or somebody chose for them. They didn't choose the profession. Somebody said, hey, become an engineer, get a job in Infosys. That's, you'll make a good career out of it. This fellow never wanted to be an engineer. He never wanted to write software. Now here you are, you're 35 years old and you are hating your job. I mean, you made some mistakes, you made some mistakes or somebody else made mistakes. But like I said, don't blame your parents or somebody. Take charge of your life and see what it is that you want to do. So I think there is a personal accountability here.
Fair enough. So Doc, there are some wonderful questions over here. I'm going to take the liberty. I'm going to send them to you separately because they are very, very important. If you can send a line each to those questions we haven't been answered, I think the people asking the questions would be deeply appreciated. Hello? Sorry, can you hear me? Yeah.
I don't know how much I'm going to sign up to answering questions by email. Send it to me.
Just see if you have time. If you have time and you feel
it's a lot easier for me to
So I have a question here which will be interesting now. Which is in terms of this unprecedented situation that all of us worldwide are going through right now, right? So what is the call to leadership there? So whether this myths or what, suddenly we are all completely out of sync. We don't know what the heck to do because everything, all theories, our world is upside down completely now. So what are those leadership traits that should be called upon at this time? Or is that a fair question?
I think that flexibility becomes very, very important. Protecting your business, protecting your people, thinking long term more than short term. Those are the kinds of things that become important. And I think the idea of success changes. Previously we probably said, if I don't have 15% growth, I'm a failure. Today, if I can maintain, without laying off people, that's a great success. Forget about growing the business. If I can maintain the business, it would be a great success. Be flexible. I know companies that their primary business is one thing. They said, look, my primary business is slowing down. Here is what I'm going to do. I'm going to make an impact on society. I'm going to start up a new product line. I'm going to help solve the problem, rather than sit there and complain that my original objective, has been ruined. So, like they say, when the situation gets, tough, the tough get going. You are not tough, are going to sit there and complain. So these are very challenging times. And this is why I said principles are more important. There are no formulas out there. There is no book written to say, this is how you handle coronavirus.
But of course.
Principles don't change. And those people who are following certain principles, keeping true to their, vision and objective of their organization, they will find a way.
Wonderful. Thanks so much for the very profound and deep insights into this very wonderful topic.